You know, this thing happens in my throat every month. It's like a reminder that I've quit smoking. And people who quit before you, people who quit now, they're 20, 30 years, and they're like, never count how many months it's been. Do you feel that people, I don't know, there's not a anthropological attempt to understand. Now, what happens is people who, I think everything in this world has been done before by someone. And some of it is lost knowledge because, our buddies in Atlantis have not been in a position to share the information. But in some shape or form, even if we call things innovation or invention, it has at some point been on this planet, right? So this whole idea, because I was just talking to someone about this morning. It's crazy that, we might look at the smartphone or technology as this greatest invention that has revolutionized the way society and civilizations interact and human beings view the world around them and absorb information that has been presented to them. But, well, there are other things, right? Maybe the lost city of Atlantis had, I don't know, maybe they had mermaid bots. Maybe they were not tech. They were not a tech savvy thing. But maybe they use biochemistry. Maybe use telepathy. Maybe they had a show. Kaun Banega? No, you will not do that joke because, Sandeep, you have an international audience. But someone's going, no, but you're Indian. You can do Hindi jokes. I don't speak Hindi. I apologize, but that was a funny attempt at a non-humorous joke. I'm being very aware and I'm very conscious of the words I use because my guest on today's episode, which will happen later now, this is the third time this is happening, so you might be aware of the format, that he's taking two concepts, a solo rant or rambling of sorts, and marrying it to the idea of a guest on the podcast. How crazy is that? But my guest later on in today's episode is a wordsmith. She's a teacher. She's an inventor of word games. So when I spoke to her a couple of days back, it made me aware of how I have sort of let myself down in this department. Because what I used to do when I got the chance first in my life to be independently listening to stories, because my mom would read out my books, right? And then I'd keep her up saying, read one more chapter, Ma, one more chapter, please, that Hardy Boys, I want to read that book, one more, please. But then I started getting that, I just started listening. And then I took it up more as an exercise because this was like 2010, 10. So it was kind of like the space when I wanted to figure out whether I wanted to be a writer, whether I want to write script, whether I want to be copyright and advertising, and just maybe stand up, because when I listen to audiobooks, help my diction, my pronunciation, my tone, blah, blah, blah. But also I wanted to not waste the opportunity, so I'd open up, Excel. I still don't know how to use Excel. Word document, make columns. Then I would put down a word which I didn't know. I would then, obviously right click, get antonyms, synonyms, put them down. But I would make it a point. I had this list. Obviously it's gone with the old computer, but I realized that it's important because anyway, I'm going to tell you about this thing. I'll come back to it, the telepathy thing. The joke is not gone out of my mind. But the way these things survive is, and we talk about this in the conversation coming up, about how we feel certain things, certain skills that are taught early on, like writing or speaking or reading. I wouldn't say in India specifically, but anywhere. And of course, now there are a lot of amazing teachers, and my guest is one such person who try to reinvent the wheel and not just take a tradition at face value, saying this is how things were done, so I'm going to continue doing things in that way. And even certain schools are brilliant for that. But for many people who didn't have access to such teachers or schools, it was just taken for that. It was, okay, you have the ability to read and write, and as a result, now once you have this, use it for something else, as opposed to constantly keep that updated, keep it as a skill that you can cherish, you can enjoy, you can grow on, you can question, you can play with, you can have fun with. And I know some people love games which involve words, or some people use it. Some people are expected to, when they're poets or they're writers or they're authors or they're novelists, whatever it may be. If writing is your job or reading is your job, you're expected to be a person who's in command of the language or languages, if you're an interpreter or translator. But why should that be? Why does a language have a shelf life? Like, you learn it now, you go out of the world. Because if you notice you're one of these people, say you're in marketing or sales, or you're one of these people who's a lawyer, or one of these people who's a doctor, you're the language of, say, if you're an English speaker or Hindi speaker or German speaker, the words you use, they become less and less, because you start using only the words you need, in your professional life and in social life. And the social life words keep limiting themselves by virtue of the people you're interacting with. And so sometimes maybe in a movie you'll hear some words, that's an interesting word, or in a play or in a web series, wherever, or maybe if you're a game night, if you're one of those people who has game night and you're very excited, I'm doing game night. I'm such a good evolved person. No, you're not. But you have these opportunities to use words. But I was just thinking, this conversation was a reminder of how I like words and I like language, and not because you have to use it as, it's not a means to an end, but why can't we appreciate the fact that a language doesn't have to be limited by the way it was taught, or for the purpose it was taught, or by the influences that were used to teach it. But why can't we play with it? Why can't we use why can't we keep ourselves up to date with a larger vocabulary, new? I wouldn't say new. I mean, slang is obviously going to happen if you are living, if you're not living under a rock. But there's so many things that keep happening, and we keep limiting ourselves, going, it's just a fucking way I speak, man. But now, this conversation will open your eyes and open your ears to the possibilities that are out there, and the people who are trying things with language, and the things that are even the benefits of doing it, maybe for your mind, maybe for your growth as a person, maybe just to not get stagnant. And that's important. Maybe that can be your goal, a resolution for 2021 in November, pretty late in the year, but fucking hey, just say, hey, my growth, my resolution is not to be stagnant. Anyhow, so coming back to Atlantis, they did have technology which we see, because things like we talk about, and I've spoken about it in previous episodes, the idea of, how many people are like, now things that are there in yoga 3,000 years back are now being discovered by science. That is a very, very, very specific South Indian people defending yoga. But clearly, if you look at ancient is a combination, by the way, guys, of Asia and ancient. Yes, it's remarkable how stuff leaves my face sometimes without my approval. So ancient texts that parted wisdom that we still now are discovering, going, the parchment from the parchment from Pirumundu that reveals that the kneecap of mummy bones will help restore youth in obese frogs, or something like that. But there is, each civilization has its heights of progress and achievement. And we can't, first of all, believe that we are the most superior civilization or species. No, it's not species, civilizations or societies that existed. Because clearly, if you look at the way things are going right now with, in the world around us, I think, we might have Tesla, SpaceX, electric cars, we might have smartphones. But I think in different ways, there have been vast amounts of knowledge that various races, civilizations, what do you want to call them, have discovered. But then, hey Greta, the planet might just be like, hey, I'm tired of you fuckers, and just drop a bomb on us, or drop like a comet, which is the ultimate sort of thing, which we sort of we spend so many years toiling over to come up with one nuclear bomb, and just one thing, like a little, I'll give you an analogy. When you are done taking a big poop, right, and then there's one little pellet which has to come out, and it just poof, and it just splashes, and that is how insignificant the universe treats us. And that little pebble of poop is a comet that destroys the planet, destroyed the dinosaurs, destroyed the lost city of Atlantis through tidal waves, and that's how we might even be destroyed. So do I feel positive about the stuff I'm saying? Absolutely, because don't take yourselves too seriously, and don't think you're the shit, because a little shit from the universe can take you out just like that. But I don't know where I was going, I don't know where I came from, but all I know is that I like Cotton Eye Joe. Cotton Eye Joe. Hey, by the way, I think we're good. I just been doing some other work. I don't do voiceovers usually, but a friend sends some voiceover work my way once in a while, and I've been attempting to do this. But I'm fascinated. I really, using this interview conversation, I don't like the word interview, but this conversation with Nidhi Jaipuria as an opportunity to remind myself that I like words. I want to refresh and jog my memory. I like that. Jog your memory. I'm not a big fan of jogging, but jogging my memory is like, it's good. But yeah, my another thing that happened, usually when you go on YouTube and you watch videos, whether it's about playing a certain song on the guitar, or whether it's cooking or recipe, or how do you do double stitch. I don't know why I've ever searched double stitch. I don't think in the foreseeable future, at least, there will be a situation where I'm alone at home with a needle and thread and absolutely no options of clothes without buttons. I don't know, but there are things. But more often than not, whether it's the guitar, like even some golf videos which I've been watching, never really translate well. And people are like, have you been trying to learn golf through YouTube tutorials? Well, don't. Subscribe to ours 30-day free trial. Rolling your R's for unnecessary reasons. But I did this thing, go for some lessons, and problem is it goes back and forth, right? One day I'm good, next day missing the ball entirely, and there's no point, there's no fun if you're hitting like a madman and the ball is still there, or you're hitting under, the ball scoops up. So I did this, and I checked out this guy, I think Todd Graves or Braves or Graves, I don't know. I should probably know if I mentioned the guy's name, right? But I haven't done that much. I haven't made that much of an effort. Just something I typed, it came up. It was called the Mo Norman one plane swing, and there were some 5 tips he taught us, or taught me. I don't think collectively we were watching this unless some Russian bots were joining me without my knowing. And I just literally soaked it in, went to the range, and I was whacking the ball. I don't know, I was so excited, felt damn good. It was going left, right, everywhere. It was going left, right, and it was like a political rally orgy, just going all over the place. But I was so happy because I was hitting the ball. Ting, ching, ching, the sound was coming. Felt damn good. Hey, on that note, I'm going to continue trying to improve my swing, my vocabulary, and my fondness for language, which I know, only English and Kannada. But I don't know if I can take up another language. I'm too old, man. I don't know if I want to take up like something. But if I do take up a language, I want a language with clicks in it. I'm tired of all this. Suddenly, like, I'll go to the Alliance Française and I will I think those words you can, Spanish and French, I can pretty much get by just by saying things like, hello, yes, good, yeah. I know, it's just stupid. Or like, hey, shit, I don't even know what the Spanish sound like. Hey, senor. No, that is Mexican, but Mexican, that's Spanish, but let's not go down that path and end up offending one Spaniard who listens to this. Cocker Spaniard. But hey, I want to learn a language with a click in it. That might be it. I've just learned it. Mastered the art of languages. That's called clickbait. Anyhow, on that note, my guest is Nidhi Jaipuria. She's a lovely lady from Bangalore. She's my senior from school. We never knew each other in school, but hey, now we do. That's how school works. Later on, you find out, to discover relationships that flourish, or whatever the word may be. I'm not getting certain words. Anyway, need to do this thing. So, as you will hear, Shruti loves not Shruti. My God, sorry, Nidhi. Shruti is her cousin, who's my classmate. Anyway, you'll find out. But Nidhi Jaipuria is a teacher. She loves teaching, imparting knowledge, having fun doing it. She loves creating games. She loves creating various ways to teach children, and not just children, people across the ages and across age groups. Across the ages. Yeah, she's taught Jesus. That's why I didn't mean that. She's across age groups. Anyhow, it's a fun conversation. She's a lovely human being, and she's a lot of fun, energy, and you will have a blast. So as always, thanks for listening, and I am sure you will enjoy this episode. And do tell a friend. Until next time, goodbye, God bless, cheers, see you on the other side. Miss Nidhi Jaipuria, welcome to the SoapyRao show. How are you today?
Oh, well, good. Nice, bright, chirpy, just enjoying the sunshine in Bangalore.
It's excellent. I think this is called December weather, things that we Bangaloreans live for, because it's beautiful. I don't know if this has to be a podcast about the weather, but I think I'm going to start because isn't it one of those things that is, I think it's going to sound very pompous, but very Bangalore, that we look forward to this, and the sort of the old timers, as we call ourselves, we're like, the weather is like December weather, and most people are like, dude, we can't even see the sky. Like, and there's one thing I want to talk about is like, now most people don't even look at places which we call Bangalore as things they recognize, right? Like could be like your Lavelle Road, or it could be these older parts.
Right.
Now it's not even considered as Bangalore. Like the other day I went for a show, I think in I don't know, sound like I can't see the name, but like past Kalyan Nagar, and
Yeah,
these are like micro cities within Bangalore. I'm like, man, it's huge.
that's
But
true.
yeah, anyway, I'm glad that I'm talking to an old Bangalorean, so we at least have, and I think we have a lot of common stuff to talk about. So first of
Yes,
all, thanks for
forward.
agreeing to doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me on the show, and just looking forward to, just like you said, like the old Bangalorean style, just sitting and chatting about anything and everything
Yeah.
and nothing, and still having a blast, really.
Yeah, I we went to the same school, and I saw an email from the Alumni Association where they cover people from various batches who are doing interesting work, and that's where I've heard of you, and I don't want to sound creepy in that way. I've heard of you, Nidhi. No, but I've of course through your cousin, who's my classmate. But when I read about the work that you're doing, it's very interesting. It stood out for me because I love people who are trying new things in the education space, people who love language, people who love using language, creating opportunities for people to appreciate language. So we've done each of those things and all of those things.
Right.
So let me just start off by asking, you have been a teacher for many years, and we'll
Yes.
get to the other aspects of teaching and also how you've used that to sort of create entertainment in education. But there's something which stuck out when the last time we spoke. Taught nonsense, right? And that's in your own
That's right.
words.
Yes, I did.
At Shrishti, you designed a
Yes.
course in nonsense.
Yes.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, I think actually that's probably in some ways a culmination of a lot of things that I've done over the last 20 years of teaching. I've always been fascinated by words. And I think words, it's not even just, sometimes it's about the way the words sound.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's about the way they trip over your tongue.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the spelling. Sometimes it's the connotation. But
Hmm.
words have always fascinated me. I mean, to the extent where sometimes I've written an entire story just so I could use a particular word.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lot of what we do, especially as Indians growing up, we're kind of surrounded by nonsense. And I think a particular aspect of nonsense actually intrigued me.
Mm.
It fascinated me, and I think that's what it led me to sort of delve more into this whole genre called nonsense literature. So
Right.
nonsense actually doesn't mean no sense,
Right.
as a lot of people think, okay, it's foolishness, it's gibberish, it's no sense. It's got aspects. All of those are essential parts of nonsense.
Yeah,
But
because
what's the beauty of nonsense
from the
is that
initial time, nonsense, it just sounds very dismissive, right? Like, oh, it's
that's right.
nonsense.
That's
Yeah.
right. Most people tend to dismiss it. Most people tend to think, oh, that's very silly. But
Yeah.
actually, nonsense grows out of an excess of sense. You really can't have nonsense or the spirit of whimsy unless there's an excess of sense, unless there's a
Mm.
multiplicity of meanings. So, what's the beauty about nonsense is that it sort of skates that thin edge between making sense
Mm.
and not making sense. It doesn't mean no sense, it just makes not making sense in the conventional way. And here you make
Mm.
sense through your ears. Here you make sense where there's this tug and push and pull between, let's say, logic and language. You subvert the rules. Think of it as slime. You can squish it, you can squeeze it, flip it, turn it
Mm.
upside down. The end, it still depends on slime for its existence. So the same way nonsense depends on the
Mm.
rules of language for its existence. But the beauty of it is you squeeze, tug, flip, turn it upside down. And in a way, what I really enjoy, and maybe in some ways it's a facet of my teaching, is that I like to be unpredictable in my teaching. And
Yeah.
unpredictable because there's always that element of surprise, of you don't know where you're going. So that's what leads to
Right.
the aha moments. So if
Okay.
you
Well,
think
before,
about
I want
nonsense,
to know what you. Okay. So, what do you?
it's like
What?
going
Give me
down
some
a rabbit hole.
examples. Yeah. No. Give me some examples of nonsense, because
Sure.
I'm just trying to think right now. Like, I'm trying to draw parallels, right? Like, you're saying it's
Okay.
an excess of
Sense.
sense to work
Yeah.
within, and as a result, you have slang. Like, sometimes each culture, each generation has their own slang, right? Like,
Right.
now it's
Right.
the emojis and
Yes. The
the
memes.
abbreviations, right? The TMIs, the BRBs, etc., etc.
Yes.
But, like, for instance, um, you know, the I'm just trying to think, because I mean, I love the sound of words sometimes, and especially, you know, when I'm doing comedy, it's the idea is to keep it simple, keep the words simple, but keep even if it's a big concept, right? If you're talking about race or you're talking about cultural divide, you want to use simple words. But very often, what happens is, even if the joke might not land, the use of words, you know,
Oh,
provokes laughter.
yes.
Um, there are certain sounds that make people laugh in a word, and that's why I'm really fascinated by what you just said. So when you say nonsense, does it actually mean, because I've heard of people using gibberish to write plays, uh, so is it just funny sounding words? Is it words that make people sort of baffle people, or is it words that kind of evoke a sense of what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you know, so can you give me some examples of nonsensical words?
So I think nonsense sort of is everything that you just said and more,
Okay.
right? And the beauty of nonsense is you make sense with your ears. So you don't
Mm.
make sense in the conventional way of making sense. And I think
Mm.
a lot of us assume that because something has to make sense in a particular way, that's
Yeah.
the only sense it can have. And that's why I
Yeah.
said the multiplicity of meanings. And nonsense plays with the sound of words.
Huh.
Nonsense plays with the fact that the same word can have multiple meanings. And I think nonsense is
Mm.
there in song. It's there in your playground rhyme. Since you asked me, where do you see nonsense, right?
Yeah.
You see it from an akkad bakkad bambego, which you play, and it's this musicality or the rhythm of sounds.
Yeah.
Nonsense is then a Tenali Rama story that you grew up in. It's
Yeah.
in Shakespeare's Fools.
Yeah.
The greatest nonsense poem of all time, at least in English literature, is Jabberwocky. And Jabberwocky just makes enough sense to make sense, and yet it doesn't make sense. I don't know if you remembered it. 'Twas brillig and the slidey toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome rats outgrave. Now you're like, okay, I kind of get it. It sort
Yeah.
of makes sense, but it doesn't completely make sense, right? So nonsense
Mm.
uses new words that you can create. It uses portmanteaus, it uses reduplications, it uses inverses, paradox. So all of this and more just sort of comes into this whole space called nonsense. So like I
When you
said,
just
it
said
can
that, I
be
felt like, have I
uh,
skipped education at all? None of those things made sense to me.
you know, it's so sad sometimes, Sandeep, that all our languages, and especially the Indian languages, and you'd be surprised. So a lot of people think, well, okay, who writes nonsense? Is it just a Lewis Carroll or an Edward Lear or someone who wrote
Uh,
Tenali Ram? Rabindranath Tagore wrote nonsense. One
mm.
of his favorite poems is about, I think, catching an elephant sneeze.
Mm.
And for me, just the sound of the title just evokes this whole sense of, oh my God, and your mind kind of wanders down all these different places.
Yeah.
Shukumar Ray, the number of people, okay, Kabir,
I mean, for
everybody
that matter,
assumes
even that story, right? Like Ruskin Bond, Rikki Tikki Tavi, it really sticks,
it
even
sticks. So
though,
why does it stick? It's the
yeah,
name. It could be the alliterative name. It could be just the sound, the
yeah,
musicality. All of that's nonsense, really. And I think
yeah.
that's what's fascinating about nonsense because you're surrounded by it, you're immersed in it. It's just that no one's noticed it. And I think
I mean,
sometimes
it's
when you
there, right? Right now, if you look at the Robert Jordan Wheel of Time, or you look at, say, you know, J.K. Rowling, or you look at, say, Terry Pratchett, or you look at your even George R.R. Martin,
yes,
there are characters that have names, and the, you know, like, you know, whether it's the the way they announce their lineage, or whether it's a
yes,
certain um, legend which is associated with a warrior, and these are names. No, and it's amazing that these things are, you know, there is sort of a method to the madness, if you want to
oh,
call it,
absolutely.
because I think that's the beauty. Like, you know, I have this sort of observation that Indians, we take words and Indianize them, right? And I think when you're saying these things like nonsense, I think there is an Indianization of English, proper the Queen's English, if you want to call it, right? I mean, I'm not talking about mispronouncing. I'm not talking about the Indian accent. I'm just like, you know, I have this bit in stand up as well, where actually we don't need words to communicate the situation effectively. Like, if you look at, you know, certain books, they talk about like a beautiful a beautiful sort of grass covered field with dewdrops sprinkling themselves in a romantic sense of fairy touch. Kind of, they make it very sort of wordy. And in India, it would be like they'll do it in a very different way, right? Like a very plitch kind of morning, you know, where the birds were going zooey, and, you know, the sounds, which are very
Right.
communicative, very Indian, but they're very beautiful. Like, I do it in a comedy sense where we use words like Zoe or Darbur, and it's true how we use it. But even like if a person says, a bee flew, PG Woodhouse would say, a misguided bee running away from his angry wife would twat into a windowsill, right? But an Indian would just say, "Pachak, it hit that," right? And
But
Pachak is
Pachak just works.
it
That's
just
it.
works, yeah,
That's the beauty of Pachak, really.
yeah,
And I think I was just listening to what you just said when you started off. And I think J.K. Rowling, so a lot of these people do it so beautifully, even
yeah,
Asterix for that matter.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the beauty is, and that's where the tongue in cheek is, the pun is, the wit is,
Mm,
that the name has those connotations. And you're actually chuckling at the fact that this character, how cleverly they've used the name. I mean, Rowling is a
yeah,
master at it.
yeah,
A lot of, the characters, actually, if you look at the etymological origin of the words, and those who know English, they enjoy the fact that she's named the character that more than anything else. Or for me, in Asterix, one of my favorite characters, well, it was a Roman, and he was called Nefarious Purpose. And I just was square on the hypotenuse. And, he was this architect in, I think Asterix and Cleopatra. And I still remember chuckling over it and saying, oh
yeah.
my God, that's hilarious, because
I mean,
it's
that's
just
where the adultness of these comics come in. I
absolutely
never read them, but my
right.
mom read out a few to me.
Yes.
Whether it's like, blistering barnacles from
Oh, Haddockisms are
yeah,
legendary. Yeah.
yeah, that or this one in Asterix. I mean, you can just go back now, and I was just thinking about it. Like the potions guy, who's the healer of the Gauls, his name is Getafix, right? And it's such a brilliant name
It
for someone in today's day and age where they're like, oh my God, Breaking Bad, drugs, and there's this guy who's
is.
this wizened old man giving people and giving Asterix that potion, which makes him like this wonder warrior. It's pretty sure there's something in it beyond just herbs, right?
It is, but that's it. It's fine. Take it for what it is.
It's
Enjoy it.
beautiful.
That's the beauty actually also of nonsense in some way. So again, somebody wouldn't relate nonsense to, let's say, an asterisk. You
Mm,
wouldn't relate nonsense to a lot of what you read and teach. But it's
yeah,
always on the surface. It's this thing just dancing below the surface. You only have to just look. Look beneath a
yeah,
couple of layers. Just at least stop to look. And that's when you enjoy it that much more. And I think
yeah,
anything and everything has it. So I
yeah.
think that's what got me to love nonsense as much as I do.
And I love the fact that you have taken it forward because you know what happens? I'll give you a context of where I was with English, right? It was almost like very similar to you, like ICSE, ISC English. We were, for me, it was Merchant of Venice and Hamlet. And
Right.
there was a sort of daunting sense of English, right? That you have to speak it the way the Queen's English is spoken, and if you mispronounce the V's and W's, you will be mocked. And when I went for university to the UK, granted it was Wales, where I probably sounded better than most of the Welsh, but still,
Yes, you did.
there was still a sense of if you don't speak it well, you will be mocked, and there is still that sort of remnants where in India, Indians from tier 2, tier 3 cities, when they see us so-called English medium, ICSE bred English speakers, they feel a bit daunted. And I've spoken to friends, they're like, oh no, you English people, you are privileged. And therefore there is this resurgence of regional language, etc., etc. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but you get my sense, right?
Yes.
But it was almost like if you don't speak it the way a proper upper class British person speaks, and you've heard this in the theatre troops that perform in Bangalore, right? They overdo it. They're like, oh, the other day, and I'm like, my good lord, your name is Bhaskar. Why are you speaking like this, right? But what you're saying brings a joy to the language where you can take the words, take the rules of English, because I don't know the rules. I don't know where certain prepositions are adjuncts or whatever. See, that I messed up already, right? But there are
So
certain things.
disclaimer, even as an English teacher for 20 years, I
Okay,
still don't know the grammar rules. It's intuitive. That's the beauty of it. You don't have
right.
to know every rule. It's
No, what are those things? What is that thing called? That thing that I love the term which they use, right? The iambic pentameter. I love it. I don't know what it means, but is it right
the
what I said?
sound of, so exactly. Why do you like it? You just like the way
I love the sound of it.
it's
I
the
don't
way
know
you
what it
sound,
means.
right? I
I
am
don't know
the
how to use it in
pentameter.
writing. Yeah,
Doesn't matter. It
yeah.
doesn't matter. That's the best part about language. And
No,
I
and that's
think
the
that's
beauty of it.
where
Is
a
what I
lot
was
of
trying to
people
say.
miss out.
Is when it comes to conventional English, right? There is a certain kind of intimidation that you have to do it in, and it discourages people from learning it. But when you say it like this, whether I'm horrible at spellings, I'm horrible at writing because for obvious reasons, right? But there is a joy of hearing words, and for me, the beauty of English and books and stories came to life when I listened to audiobooks because you have these voice actors who bring characters to
Oh
life,
yes.
and I think all of that if you ask me now, do you remember more of English and the way it was taught during school, which would be from the age of 6 to the age of 19? Or do you remember more, or did you learn more or appreciate the language more from the age of, say, 28 to 38? Definitely it's the latter, because of the way it was, the input. And
Yes.
and I think, as someone like you in the space, and you just said, I don't know the rules. It's beautiful that you're doing it, because I think we need to break those barriers of it has to be taught in a certain way. You have to write cursive, you have to learn this, because it's a way you can marry cultures, you can marry generations, certain time periods where all these come together. Okay, Shakespeare wrote and he was brilliant, but now we live in a time where um, it can be appreciated, but it can be taken as a starting launch pad and do more with it. And I think that's what I want to ask you, because you are doing more, incorporating nonsense, incorporating your knowledge of literature, your love for the language, love for words. And can you tell people, because you told me this briefly, I want to go into that space, what you're doing with all of this, because it's not just you're sitting here on the podcast and telling me you're actually running a school, which you briefly mentioned earlier, and I cut you off. So I want you to talk about that now, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. So I think, like anyone else, I started teaching in a conventional school, and Aditi, unlike most schools, gave me the space to be very creative. But at the end of the day, you still have to work within a certain framework of, let's say, a syllabus or a curriculum or whatever. And that's when I realized that for me, I just needed to be able to play with language. Like you said, when I teach, I'm part conjurer, I'm part juggler, I'm a theater artist, I'm a magician. I become this little kid. I can do anything. And that's for me the way I need to teach. There has to be play. And I think there has to be always fun. I mean, that's something I promised myself the day I stepped into a classroom 20 years ago. I promised myself that I would never get bored. And I promised that I'd never let the kids get bored. It didn't matter what I taught, right? And in some ways, the brain gym. So I guess the name also implies, why is it called the brain gym? It's definitely give your brain a good workout. But it's also, when I say workout, it isn't do the same 10 reps. Do cartwheels, turn it upside down, do whatever, but just have fun. And at the end of the day, so there's a lot of rigor. You have to learn, but there's a way to make learning just that much more magical and fun, right? So yes, thankfully, I was able to have my own creative learning studio called the Brain Gym. It's been there for the last 15 years. I get to design my curricula exactly the way I want. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of research. There's a method to the madness. I like describing the Brain Gym as a creative kerfuffle. Kerfuffle, again, being one of my favorite words. Maybe it's all the F's in it. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way it trips over my tongue.
I love words I can't spell. I don't know what
exactly,
it is.
that's another thing. So I think kerfuffle creates that sense of chaos and commotion. But the fact that it's creative, and the fact that, like I said, there is a method to the madness, it just, I know exactly what's happening, but at the same time, I'm allowing it to go wherever it leads me. It's a bit like falling down a rabbit hole, right? Just when you think you're going down a rabbit hole of sense, at the last minute, it turns around and takes you down some other path. At the Brain Gym, that's what I do. I design my own curricula where, for example, I would use asterisks, and I would use the wordplay in asterisks, the names of characters to teach. I could pull down a Macbeth and we would act it out in the way we want to do it. And suddenly Macbeth through a comic strip, for example, it could be about words and the sound of words. It could one day just be, okay, can you think of these big clunky words that plod along? Or can you think of these scowling, grumping, words, or moving, pirouetting, sauntering words? So you could look at words like that. I'm somebody who loves reading. Again, stemming from my wordplay. So I, for example, love art, right? And artworks. And again, most people would tend to look at art and say, well, that's so boring. But when you just sit and either do slow looking, or you get kids to look at art very differently and express themselves, again, making it fun. And there are ways to make it very creative. So like I said, I draw influences from art. It could be all the music we grew up with. Yeah, they think their grandparents listen to it. But yeah, the music of the 60s and 70s, the protest songs, they're still as relevant today. So I think at the Brain Gym, in a way, it's a microcosm of everything that I'm reading and seeing, things that I've enjoyed and that I just want them to appreciate. So Roald Dahl turns, you have to hear this. So for example, if you're doing Roald Dahl, there's Madame Trunchbull, right? And everyone knows about Miss Trunchbull. But have you ever given, she's the headmistress who's extremely strict, and she's probably the worst headmistress anyone can ever have. This is the story Matilda. Yeah, that's Matilda.
Right.
And I just remember this incident. Most kids are always on the receiving end of being, for Miss Trunchbull. But what if you give the kid the power and said, okay, you know what? Why aren't you Miss Trunchbull? And you need to come up with an insult, but which doesn't use any inappropriate language. And I still remember this kid. He was all in 5th grade. And he just called this other kid and he was like, Krishan, you preposterous pineapple. And I was just like, I fell off my seat laughing. I was like, that's brilliant. He came up with that on the spur of the
Yeah.
moment. And that's all it takes. So Roald Dahl, so that's another thing. Roald Dahl, remember you said you don't know spellings of words. But
Yeah.
if I told you a word like biff squiggle
Yeah.
or like lick swishy
Yeah.
or like a fizz banger, if all the Roald Dahl stuff,
Yeah.
we can do an entire thing on Roald Dahl. I don't care if it doesn't matter, it doesn't fit into the conventional, this
Yeah.
is the way to write. And I think coming back to the brain gym, very often it would take me that much time to tell kids, I don't care if it's right or wrong. I
Yeah.
don't care if you've got the right answer. Tell me
I mean,
why
look at the
you thought of
spells
it.
in J.K. Rowling, right? In Harry
Absolutely.
Potter,
Oh
most of
yeah,
them
we do
actual
born
words
beauty
like
all the time.
lumos, luminate, or
Absolutely.
what's the other one?
Patronus
Expelliarmus.
is, yeah, there's so many. Expecto
Yeah, I mean all
Patronus.
of them. Yeah, it's
Wingardium Leviosa, the whole concept of levitating in,
yeah.
the Leviosa, not Leviosa, but anyway.
Stupefy. I mean, it's just the thing is, and that's what gets me, right? When it becomes a bestseller, everyone's like, "Oh, now we." But if a child does it, you're like, "No, no, what are you doing? That's wrong. You should say it correctly." And that's what we, and I'm sure you've read and heard a lot of talks by Ken Robinson, who's an
Yes,
authority on
totally.
creativity and children's ability to sort of to sort of explore their own aspect of what they want. And I think he had a famous line, right? That education, the education system, or in today's day and age, we are educating the creativity out of children, right? And
Absolutely.
this is the problem. And what you're saying right now, it sounds fantastic. That, I mean, I didn't know the word preposterous or what it meant, but the fact that a child takes a pineapple, which in no way is preposterous, in fact, you might say a pokey pineapple, right? Which is a
Right.
typical,
Or a
and
prickly
it's like
one. But
amazing Ritwik. I don't know why I named Ritwik. Amazing Ritwik that you can take pokey and pineapple and you drew a logical conclusion that something's pokey. And that's what you're rewarded for, because in ICSE or whichever syllabus, they'll give you marks saying this kid has observational skills. But no one would say, would reward you for saying something as like a smirky this thing, a smirky tomato, right?
or
Because
dizzy dumpling or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly, right? Because that makes no sense in the reward system of how we are being educated. But
Right.
I love the sound of it, like a smirky samosa, right? Like what is smirky about a samosa, right?
So
Nothing.
I
But
can think of 10 things right now. Like Alice says, you can think of 6 impossible things before breakfast, but that's exactly what it is. It's
yeah,
the magic. So in a way, I think the brain gym's like a roller, I kind of take kids on this magic carpet ride of imagination, creativity, the magic of words, and they're always jousting and jostling with each other. But that's
yeah,
the fun of it. It doesn't matter. Actually, the amount of learning that happens, and I
yeah,
think what kids love is the fact that it's okay. And they see me as immersed in it as they are, right?
yeah.
We have snowball fights in my class, paper
You were
ball
telling
fights.
me, yeah.
With you can put whatever you want in it. I create these game boards. So
By the way,
again,
just to let you know, this is not a podcast. It's more a request to like an interview that you are doing for me to join your brain gym.
come,
So
come, I'd love to have you. They'd love to have you.
it'll be
At the
fun.
end of the day, Sandeep, I think it's just about loving what you do
Yeah,
and enjoying it. And I think kids are very intuitive in that sense. They pick up
absolutely.
on the fact that you're enjoying it.
Mm,
And yes, a lot of thought does go into creating that. It takes me a lot of time to, make it as funny as I want it, as interesting, as
mm,
unpredictable as I'd like it, because of the fact that they don't know what's coming next. And there's
mm.
always something to surprise them, right? And again, I believe that one of the ways you can, when a lot of people say you're an English teacher, what kind of writing do you do? I said it'll all come together unless and until you enjoy language and you have the freedom and the ability to play with it, which is where someone like you comes in, right? What is stand-up comedy? The fact that you can pun on words, the wittiness, the banter, all of that stems on the fact that you're so comfortable with the language, right?
Which is
And
now, I feel I went through a big dilemma that I was not sounding right, because, the worst thing you want on stage is grasping, uh, and having that grasping for words and having that confusion, going, shit, am I mispronouncing it? Did I get the right word? Because you don't want to be laughed at. You want them to laugh with you, right?
absolutely.
Or if it's self-deprecating, of course, for obvious reasons, they laugh because you made fun of yourself. But that was my problem, going, oh my God, did I say the word right? Because I'll give you an example, right? I was talking about, when you walk hand in hand with your partner, right? You
Yeah.
twine your fingers, right? But there's another word which is intertangled, right? I made them both into one word, into intertwingled. And then for the rest of the show, I'm like, did I just fucking say
You
intertwingled?
know what you just did? You actually made a portmanteau, and that's brilliant.
It's not brilliant when you're on
It
stage in
is.
front
I
of
would have
100 people
loved it.
going, I know, but in my head going, what the hell did I just say? And this is all happening in my head while I'm continuing with my rest of my
But Sandeep, you
material.
realize everyone got it. It made sense
Yeah.
to those. So honestly, that's again. So again, we're coming back to nonsense. Right? What's nonsense? It's portmanteaus.
Yeah.
Taking two words, putting them together because they just sound. I mean, I would rather say intertwined. Just makes so much more sense than saying
Yeah.
intertwined or twined or tangled. Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, I would have been like delighted.
You would have, but I don't think the most
I
of the
think most
audience
people
would have
would
listened.
be, trust me.
My audience is like, dude, when's he going to say Benchot, right? He's not said it yet. But no, I find it fascinating. But I want to know, does this stuff, because it sounds really, really like right now when you're talking, I'm like trying to think of words, right, which are fun and which make me smile. Like for instance, um, I love the fact, and some people, also really, and most people who read PG Woodhouse like it for different reasons. Like, the fact that if you're talking about, Lord Emsworth, who loves his pig so much, called Empress, and the description where I don't have to even watch a TV series with, Jeeves and Wooster, right? Like when I hear the description of Lord Emsworth at the pig pen, and there's someone walking towards it. It says, as a suit of old raiment came to life, which was draped across. That's the Lord, right? He's just draped across the fence of his pig pen, or something like. He looked as startled as a tiger that saw his native taken away from him at the last minute. Like you can just imagine, like a tiger being startled, right? That's just such a beautiful expression that instead of I just find it mind blowing how he uses is the right word, analogies, or draws these. Experiences from animals and innate and sort of inert objects, which I find crazy. But what I want to ask you is, when your kids come to the brain gym, where you teach them all these ways to think and ways not to think, and tell them what is not right, what is wrong, you just tell them to do whatever they love doing. How does that fit in, especially in an education system now, which is reeling from the blow of a pandemic, or reeling from this identity crisis, because everything was served to get a job, but now things are changing. So how do you prepare kids for it? Because you've been in both worlds, in a conventional school and you run the brain gym. So can you just sort of take us through that, because it's interesting to know.
I think what's interesting is that I think it's contrary to what you're saying. I think when we were growing up, there was a lot of very straight-jacketed, cookie-cutter jobs that you had to get to, right? Or you could go to.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're doing stand-up comedy, or you're hosting a podcast, the fact that I'm doing
No one ever hired me.
language
That's the main reason
nonsense.
why. This
Yeah.
is not creative expression. I
Okay.
had no job.
The fact that I can teach nonsense and get away with it, and actually
Yeah.
call my course Making Sense of Nonsense, and it's fine with that,
Yeah.
shows that we do live in a world which is more accepting of the fact that people can be creative
Yeah.
and do. I mean, I'm lucky to do exactly what I love, and I've been doing that for so many years.
Yeah.
But trust me, it's actually the opposite to what you're saying. A lot of us grew up in schools where the curriculum probably, I mean, not probably, actually is geared or designed to sort of make everything very stereotypical. But the world we live in is the opposite. The
Yeah.
fact that you have influences, whether it's a Netflix, the memes that are going around, the fact that kids have access to, let's say, listening to podcasts, the things they're reading, there's a lot more voices coming out about whatever they're doing. I think all those influences do add up, and in a way, it kind of balances out the stereotypical and the more straitjacketed school lives that we have. And
Yeah.
honestly, I would actually give credit to schools. They might have a curriculum like an ICSE or a CBSE,
Yeah.
which sort of forces them in some ways to do certain very
It
basic
boxes them
stuff.
in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it boxes them in. But at the same time, I think all schools do give kids that space to venture out, to voice what they think, to try out something different. So I think you're always walking that tightrope. And I don't think I've ever faced that problem. So I teach kids, let's say, from grade 3 to grade 8 or 9. And then, like I said, I've also taught undergrads. And I'm just coming back to my experience at Shrishti. It was like a microcosm of India. I had kids from every part of India that came in. And when we did nonsense, we celebrated every language. So when I said,
Right.
okay, it was a bit like the Tower of Babel, I said, you know what, go and tell me nonsense that you've heard in every other language except the one that you use at home. So people had Odia, people had Assamese, people had Gujarati, and it was brilliant because you still got it. It didn't matter. You didn't understand the words. You understood the inflection. You understood the
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back to Brain Gym, it's just fascinating, believe me, because they're kids from so many schools. They're kids from across, thanks to online Brain Gym, they're kids, across India. And, I'll give you an example. I asked them to do spoken word poetry once. And I said, let's do a rant. And most of
Yeah.
them looked at me. I said, yeah, you can rant about anything. And the fact that it's creative expression, it's free expression, There are no rules. There's no rules that, okay, it has, I hate rhyming, by the way. It shouldn't rhyme. You don't have to do anything of the kind. What do you want to rant about? Just express it. And the rants was fantastic. So
Nice.
honestly, Sandeep, like whatever you guys are like super inspirations for these kids. The fact that you can speak your mind, you can say what you want, it's just amazing. Believe me, I don't think that's been a problem. I know you asked me the question, I probably veered away from it, but I
No, no,
genuinely
I
don't
think it's
see that as
perfectly
an
if you've
issue at
mentioned
all.
this because a cousin of mine, and I keep bringing her up in this podcast because I kind of despise her. Anyway, no, not for the obvious reasons. It's just that this thing she said once, because you mentioned this thing about ranting, kids having this amazing ability to sometimes surprise themselves, right?
Yeah.
But I remember this particular statement, and I it really bothered me because this is as a parent she made this statement, right? So there was a show. It was at this mall, which was clearly catering to families, right? In the outdoor sort of the what's it called, the amphitheater area. So they asked us to keep it friendly, keep it, no curse words, because in India it's a curse words means it's a the even if you can crack the most amazing joke, which is the most amazingly insightful, most funny, but if you drop an f-bomb, that's it, every family is like, oh my god, it's sacrilege, right? So I did this show. Of course, I abstained from language, and of course, the joke was good. And I think I've also grown as a person, as a comedian, not to just simply use the F word because it's cool. And oh my god, for the first time, it's novelty, right? In India, you can go on stage and publicly and use bad words, and no one scolds you. Is quite a novelty for a lot of Indians, but once you get past that, you have to realize how to use it wisely. Just like any other word, the F word or whatever word can be a good punctuation, could add to the flavor of the punchline, whatever it may be. Let's not go into that. But I did the show and it was whatever, well received. And I was like, yeah, I can do a show without cursing, and it can happen. But then this cousin comes up, she's like, oh, it's amazing that you did this for my kids were here, and it's so good that you can keep it clean because we are a family friendly country and kids should not hear this. I'm like, never use words like should not, must not, because kids themselves might take to it. And you're telling me that your kids don't hear bad words, like, I mean, or not even bad words, cuss words or whatever you want to call it, because she said don't use bad words because we're a family friendly country and you should not. I mean, she said should not. I was like, oh, this I just want to go all out, you know what I mean? Because it puts this sense that, of course, you shouldn't curse for the sake of it, but and I think there is also a time and a place. And I think, so I want to ask you what your thoughts on curse words are, because there's obviously a cultural origin of these words, and they keep changing and the meaning changes, right? Like someone told, like when earlier, like hooking up meant meeting someone, but now hooking up means it's a sexual encounter. So these things change. So what is your experience with it? The kids you teach, because you said 3rd to 10th or 9th or undergrads, what is the, I mean, is it wrong to use curse words, first of all? And I don't want you to feel, if you don't answer it, because as a teacher, if any of your students listen, they're like, yeah, she said okay on the podcast, now we're going to curse like sailors. But that is that. You've heard that word, cursing like sailors, because clearly it's venting out of certain anger, emotion. So what has your experience been with it, and what is sort of your perspective on strong language, which must not be said in India?
So I've got two very interesting stories. So when you started talking, it reminded me of creative cursing, because that's again. So what do you think Trunchbull was doing, right? It was not abuse. It was cursing somebody without using anything inappropriate. And
Yeah.
so if I had to do something around cursing, I would say, you know what? Let's come up with the most interesting curses, and it can be funny, it can be witty, but that's the beauty of it. So, for example,
Yeah.
Shakespeare has some of the best insults.
Yeah.
I mean, you something, whatever. I'm just thinking of a bunch of them, and I just realized, okay, I can share them with you. So I actually give my kids a bunch of insults and say, you know what? Can you come up with the most, some words to kind of get them going, saying that it's okay to call someone you, whatever, okay. There's a whole bunch of them going through my head, and I'm trying to choose which one.
I'll give you one to get your jog your memory. This is one lovely one I heard, or two. He looks, I can say he or she, this is gender neutral in case anyone wants to get offended. He looks like the south end of a north going horse. I like that one. It's clean, it's cute.
I love it.
And other one, and this happens to do with looks again. And it's unfortunate, but I asked this friend, my roommate in England, I said, man, how was your date last night? Did you hook up with her? I did, because I had too many drinks. But I said, was she hot? She looked like she chased too many parked cars. I said, dude.
Like you're a few clowns short of a circus, but yeah.
Yeah, that was, I found that it takes you a second.
So I think students, so listen, if any parent comes to you and says, that my kids don't know it,
Yeah.
they're delusional. Okay,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
kid knows it. It's there in the playground. It's there on the school bus. It's there at home.
Mm.
It's there around them. It's there on media more than anything else. It's in the media that they see around them. The question is, do you choose to use it or not? And the
Mm.
question is, how do you circumvent that and say, you know what? You don't give emphasis to insults. The moment you don't make it cool and you don't make it, oh my God, you used the word, nobody cares. Nobody bothers. There's just so
It's
many other things to do and
water
so
under
many
the
other words
bridge.
to use.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I would do creative insults. So I use Shakespeare's insults. That
Yeah.
guys, I mean, beyond, the other plays that you've written and the fact that in school we were asked to, what did he say or what context. I don't know if anyone's actually looked at his plays. They're hilarious. And some of his
Yeah.
insults are brilliant. I'm actually
Yeah.
going to send you a whole list, Sandeep, after this. And
Fantastic. No, I,
trust
I
me,
love I
it's
love listening to these things
stuff.
because they make you think for a second. You're like, did he compliment me? Did he insult me? Because
Exactly. So,
there's this lovely comedian called Bill Bailey, right?
right, okay.
Musician and a really, really good wordsmith. And he's doing this interaction with a guy in the crowd, and they're talking about music, they're talking about a guitar lesson, or talking about some kind of guitar. And after like the fifth interaction, this guy just stops responding. So this Bill Bailey's comeback is like, well, that was a walk down a long, windy beach to a coffee shop that's closed.
I love that. That's brilliant. So
Because
I
it's
think what
almost
you
like,
do is imagery. Do you know how
yeah,
much
as opposed to
imagery that
saying,
you
oh,
have?
you stupid guy, why didn't you answer me? It's
No,
such a
I will do
beautiful
the
way,
same
right?
way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the cleverness. Do you
Yeah,
realize that's also nonsense? In a
yeah,
way, every single, so it's just now
yeah.
you noticing and appreciating it. So wit, banter, tongue in cheek, rich imagery. What is
Yeah.
nonsense? It's either you're making sense with your ears, or whether you see it or not. So again, Sandeep, it doesn't matter if you can't see
No, you don't
something.
have to see it. You can hear
You
the.
imagine it. It's
Mm,
that whole imagine. Like for me,
yeah,
just thinking of this guy going down this windy beach in that closed coffee shop,
yeah.
it just said so much more than you think. Oh my God, why didn't he show up?
You're feeling that frustration that he's feeling, right? Like you're
You
going down
feel
this
it.
windswept
You're
beach.
there. You feel it from all senses. It's
Yeah.
not brilliant. Trust me.
And
It's
chasing too many parked cars. It's the same thing. It's that visual, which is not really a visual, but you can just hear that patak, that sound in the face.
like you said, the mosquito on the thing going pachak.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, and I love the fact that words, and this is what I don't get, right? I mean, I do get, but like when you translate some things, like a book, to a movie, a lot of
Right.
it I think is lost. Like for me, when I listen to, like when you're talking about these exercises, like a preposterous pineapple, they, I think there's a big connection between the sound of a word and the visual it creates in your brain. And I'm sure there's studies done on this, but um, you do this even. You take it one step further beyond your brain gym sessions, beyond what you've done at Shrishti, beyond what you do and continue to do with various associations of words and teaching. But you take this one step further with the games you've created. So I want to talk about that because I find it fascinating, right? Because it was almost like you had to read to play Scrabble, or you almost have to be able to see certain board games were out of bounds, whether it's Pictionary or this thing for me, because I would be more of a burden, because I'm like, okay, what, even Monopoly, I was always in jail. Maybe I think my friends just said, no, just you're always in jail. Right? I said, okay, I'll just accept it for what it is, man. But there is a way to play games without seeing. And I want you to just, I mean, I don't want it to be about my sight or whether it's about my inability to play board games, but you brought this thing out, which I really, really appreciate. And I can sort of resonate, and gives me also like a little sense of hope that words don't have to always be seen, and words don't always have to be in a certain realm of visualization brought to life through movies. So how do you create these games? I think that's a good starting point before I keep rambling, which also a word I like.
I love rambling. I love rambling, sauntering,
Yeah,
pirouetting. Just there's just so many words again. So I mean, before I explain about the games, just the whole thing about gait, right?
yeah.
It's so boring if you just say that that person walked. I don't care. Tell me he shuffled. Tell me he rambled. Tell
Hmm.
there's just so many other ways. So that's again part of
He
just getting
rolled.
kids to
He
realize.
rolled. I
No,
loved it.
why not? He rolled. I mean, there's just so many, right? Even the
Yeah.
whole, for me, sauntering is two people sitting, swapping stories. And, I would like you to make it gender neutral. So again, in some of the books I've written, always have these animals, because
Hmm.
animals are gender neutral. There's
Hmm.
something everyone relates to. So, two crocodiles sauntering down this muddy swamp, swapping
Yeah.
stories. So again, I mean, I'm sort of digressing here, but for
No, no,
me,
I
a
love
lot of it
digressing.
is,
I should call my
yeah,
podcast Digress. I love it.
digress, dilly dally,
Dilly
digress.
dally, yeah.
I love dilly dally. It's just
I hope you
something.
watched that link I sent you with Michael McIntyre, wishy washy, hanky panky.
Oh, the reduplicators are the best. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think coming back to the games, Now that you mentioned it, just kind of, since we were talking about nonsense today, I just feel that so this game I've designed, which is called Tailspin, in some ways kind of brings together the way all the elements that I've been doing sort of in the last 20 years. It's the way I teach. For me, a word game, and the essence of it has to be fun. It has to be unpredictable. There has to be this element of chance. And I think most of all, I've always wanted something that just pivots on its head. It shouldn't go down one direction. So again, like I said, falling down a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Just when you think you've reached the end and makes sense, it just takes you around somewhere like a completely unknown path.
Yeah.
So maybe my teaching is like that and whatever I've taught over the years. So I think in some ways, I've not really thought of Tailspin, in so much detail or spoken about it before, but Tailspin grew out of a love for words again. The fact that I wanted to pass on this love for words beyond, let's say, coming to a brain gym or going to a class or reading a book. And I think as a child, my mom loved, puzzles and crosswords and always coming up with different kinds of word games for me.
Yeah.
That's something that I've been doing over the last 20 years. So in my classes, whether it's in anagrams, I don't know if you know, but something called a hink pink, but that's brilliant. It's these it's these clues and riddles which actually have the clue inside a riddle. So what would you, and the answer is a rhyming word pair.
Okay.
Oh, so and if it's a one,
I didn't know this was going to be a test, unit test.
Oh, it's great fun. No, I haven't even listen. Trust me, I didn't come up with any. I'm just kind of trying to think of some of them on the fly. But
go for it.
So once, just imagine you telling someone, "I'm going to teach you the hinky pinky," or the hinkety pinkety, or a hink pink. You're like, wait, I want to know what this is in class.
Okay.
It's nothing but just rhymes and it's clues. And
as opposed to something as daunting as today we will learn syntax. That's the only thing that will come to my brain.
Whatever. And then you just drone on. So we leave that part aside. So Tailspin kind of grew out of the fact that I wanted kids to play word games. And I'm always designing games to get them to be more engaged. At the end of the day, it has to be engrossing. It has to be exciting. It has to be engaging, right?
Yeah.
And so this word game, I said, okay, I don't want boards. Let it not be very cumbersome and fidgety. You need 10 things around you.
Yeah.
This thing is a pack of cards, cards with points. Again, so I'm kind of going a little bit into the details of the game because they kind of drew from a lot of things in my childhood.
Yeah.
The fact that in Scrabble, I used to hate the fact that a blank didn't have a single point. And I was like, what the hell? I used a blank. It's still a legitimate letter. Like, please give me 1 point for it. So when I designed the game, I was like, he's definitely going to have a point.
Thing. You can take all your peeves you
have. Definitely going to have a point.
Yeah.
So there's like a use a letter or use a vowel or consonant. Then the fact that you can have double letters because sometimes it's just harder or that much easier that, a digraph or a blend comes together. And then I said, well, hang on, everybody makes words. That's very normal, anagrams, words. So I said, okay, let's do something different. Let's add it to
basically, when you have double words, that's when you weed out the CBSE kids.
Oh, God.
I just lost half my listeners.
You shouldn't even go there. So you have to make words with ending letter or letters of the word tail, and that's how it continues. But then I was like, okay, so big deal. People make words, but where's the fun in it? And I think the fun comes in the strategy. You see, when we play Scrabble, it's pretty unidimensional. You make words, I make words, and if I have a better vocabulary,
it was too daunting for me. So
exactly.
This is to redeem the CBSE folks. It's a self-deprecating joke. As I said, I can't spell, so don't worry.
Trust me, here you don't even need to spell. You can actually win the game without spelling because you can just piggyback someone else's word someone else's word, right?
Yeah.
And I think I just wanted to make it a level playing field. And as kids, there used to be this game we used to play where we used to pass really bad cards to someone. The good old Tash card games we'd play. And the joy you felt like, oh my God, these are the worst cards. And only like the horror and you were aghast when somebody gave like even worse cards to you.
Yeah.
But just the fun of doing that, right? The fact that I had the power to pass 2 bad cards to someone.
It's almost like a little card karma. Like you would give cards thinking that, look what I've done. But alas, you received worse cards from them.
To bite you back in, in certain places.
It shows the joyous nature of human beings, right? That our benevolent nature, that we just out to screw each other at a young age.
You know what? That's the fun of it. It's actually the fun of it.
Absolutely.
And the fact that, so coming back to, so in my class, one of the things that I always have in class, and this is, like I said, doesn't matter you're in grade 5 or you're in college or this, I always like dice. Now, at the risk of sounding like I run a casino or anything of the kind, the dice is brilliant. It's
if you do run a casino, right? I'd love to see the signs in the menu on that casino. Everything would just be kerfuffle. People wouldn't find the bathroom. They're like, what does this woman put? Piddle my diddle, shizzle my nizzle. They're like, am I supposed to go 1 or 2 in here? It doesn't matter. It's all nonsense.
I think I've started you up on this whole new path.
Correct. Then suddenly your entire casino is just peeing in the fountain.
I could just see that brain of yours working and think, oh my God, I have 20 things I can just take off on what she just said.
No,
But
it's
yeah.
lovely. I feel like right now
So,
I have to use big words to impress you, but no, I
no,
think
no,
this is
no. So
great.
that's the best part. The big words don't impress. It's the little
Hmm.
ones. It's the fun ones.
See,
It's a
guys,
word
you heard
called
that. It's not the
haha. I
big
don't know if you know
words.
there's a word called haha. Do you know
Right.
there's a word called haha?
You mean like the
It's
laughter
actually a little
sound?
fence which you can't see to keep away sheep. And it's only when you trip off it and you go ha that you realize that that's actually a fence. And that's one of
Wow.
the smallest words in the dictionary. It's
Oh,
just one of those words
you
you
mean it's
like.
a little like a dog, like a little cat, what's that word? Cat flap? That's haha's
No,
a
no,
little
no. It's
fence.
actually a little fence that separates meadows, but
Right,
it's
that's
so
what I
low
meant,
that
like a
no one can
little
see it.
miniature kind of fence.
Yeah, it's so
Oh,
low. It's just enough to keep certain, not dumb animals, but not, I shouldn't call them dumb bovines, but whatever. It's to keep certain creatures out. And the funny, probably they say
so
that
this
the
is the
name
one they jump for the shepherd to fall asleep. How many,
God knows.
how many sheeps jumped the haha? Like that's just oh god, it's a yeah, something there to
I'm
work
just
with.
setting you off on a whole bunch of things. I've realized
Yeah.
that. So, anyways,
No,
coming
did you
back,
know there's a word? There's I love. I mean, obviously there's the word kid, which is a baby goat, but
yeah.
there's a word git, right? And git obviously I don't think means a good thing. But this guy, English friend of mine, he's like git means baby goat. Like a fool, I fell for it. Also, I was like, oh, there's so many gits around here, and people are like, no, you shouldn't use that. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean
that's to all
baby
of us
goats.
all the time. Yeah, yeah, we've always
Yeah,
done that. Made use of the fact that you know a word someone doesn't. But coming
yeah,
back to the game, actually, so
yeah.
the game, in a sense, is just it's a word game. You make words with the ending letters of the previous
Right.
word or words in the word tail.
Yeah.
And the fun is these game changer cards, and that's as the name implies. You can sort of pivot the game, on its head in some ways, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing that people like in a game is to have some power. The fact that you
Mm.
can say no, and the fact that you can block someone from doing something that they've been dying to do, like triple their points. I think things like that is what makes the game more interesting. And
Yeah.
when I was thinking about the game, I realized that's exactly how I teach in class. So in my
Mm.
class, by the way, since you mentioned games, beyond Tailspin, I create game boards in class. So anything
Mm.
that I teach, I actually create this game board. So almost you could do it on a whiteboard, you could do it on a blackboard, you could do it wherever. So the
Mm.
game, and every time you answer a question, you have to roll a dice. You roll a die, and you're the different teams, and you sort of follow the path around the game board.
Okay.
But it
Okay.
lands on different things. So trust me, Sandeep, there's the kids want more as opposed to saying, "Oh my God!" See, when people do pop quizzes, they're damn boring.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people get very bored with quizzes, right? I mean, you ask a
It's very
question, you
unidirectional, right? You're given a certain set of tasks and you have
but,
to
but,
fulfill
but,
them.
but
Yeah.
here you lose even when you win because
Yeah.
you might get the answer right. You roll the die. And so let's say, just give you an example. A game board I designed was called Ghosts and Spiders. Okay,
Hmm.
bats and vampires. You land on a ghost, you can scare another team's life away. You land on a spider, you lose your own life. You
Right.
land on a vampire, you land on like a cobweb or something, you get trapped. You land on a vampire, it's like a power you can keep till
Mm.
like something else happens, or you lose a life every time.
So
It
it's a
sucks your life out
cycle
of you.
which is ending somewhere. So I just
No,
quickly
so
want to ask you, we spoke
yeah.
of Get a Fix, right? Who gives the potions to Asterix. So what do you take to get all these ideas?
I don't know, so I think one way is I'm really thankful to someone, I don't know, up there, second floor, third floor, I have no clue where, but the
Right.
fact that it's been as long as it has, and I think I still have that excitement. Like I can't wait to go into class to try out something new. So I think for me, it's the excitement to see another kid's eyes light up, to see that aha, or to
Yeah.
even hear the groan. So I think my class is
Yeah.
one of the noisiest classes around because it doesn't matter it's online or not. They know that if it's Nidhi's class, you better be prepared. There'll be shrieks, yells, groans in equal
Nice.
measure, or just peals of laughter because it's
Nice.
just like I said, there's always something happening in the class. What do I take? I don't know. Just I think I guess maybe just being happy with what's happening around life, and I think
Yeah.
someone who just I think I'm just excited. Maybe it's just that
No,
I'm
I'm
just
excited
happy.
too. I can get you. I mean, I really wouldn't have thought I was one of those people who will be excited by the concept of games or wordplay. I mean, I love doing my little puns here and there, but it's when you, I mean, it's kind of it's the sense that you share this excitement with other people, and I can sense it myself, right? Like the words are like my mind's going down some other paths with some words you mentioned. I'm like, what's the word I can think? So I can only imagine for a young mind which options you're providing are so exciting, right? As opposed to conventional ways of receiving information, which are so unidirectional, which are so sort of leaning towards a certain testing point, towards a certain result, which is then rewarded by certain other activities. This just kind of like takes all of that information and jumbles it up into nonsense, which I love. I like what you're doing. No,
No, thank
Tailspin.
you.
That's a great game. You sent me a thing, and with the best part, guys, and whoever here is listening, for those of us who can't see very well, the cards are all in large fonts, so you can even play it. And there's no. And once you get the rules right, you can get someone to scan and read that out to you. I think the entire game is doable, and even the dice has dots which you can feel. So it is inclusive. Unless, of course, you don't like dice, then it excludes you. But it's a great game. The concept, I think, is one of those things, as Nidhi explained, I think you might understand, and you probably would have. But I think playing it um, is the only way you can enjoy it even more. But Nidhi, where can they get the game before we move on?
So the game's available online. It's available on Amazon, Flipkart, board game companies. Also available in Lightroom bookstore in Bangalore for listeners in Bangalore. And a lot of toy stores and bookstores across India, really. Or
Right. So
otherwise, good
it's
old Amazon's always there.
Of course.
Or
No, but we have other local
Instagram.
shops, and this is, of course, a game for kids. But also, just
It's
remember
actually not a
this.
game for kids, Sandeep. Sorry. It's
No,
a
what I
game.
mean is it's a game for kids, but I was going to add, if you have
Sorry.
a bottle of vodka lying around
Oh,
and you have a
yeah.
few friends who claim that they're very well versed in the language of English, that you can put that to the task. A few shots down, let's figure out who's absolute, who's relative.
Oh, I
Sorry.
love that again. So yeah, it's a game for all ages actually, because I think more people our age play than even the younger kids. And I
Yeah.
found people older than us, and it's one of those levelers, right? It's like it bridges generations and it kind of bonds people together. Entire
Mm,
families across 3 generations play. So honestly, it's like Scrabble. You won't say it's a game for kids; it's a game for
yeah,
anyone, really. So it's a bit
absolutely.
like that. So,
No,
but
how
thank you,
cool.
Sandeep. I'm glad you played it.
No, I'm going to play it more and more and more, and we're going to do a game sometime in the near future in person. No, but
Yes.
I want to, it's so exciting that you're doing this work, and I think in a time, and I'm glad that you have the positivity to see the fact that there is something we can take from the existing. I find in some ways the education system. I think it's also. I'm going to just throw this in there. It's the teachers who add and take or can take away from a syllabus or curriculum, and I'm glad that we have people like you around who are doing this for children going forward, because there's so many things that are in the environment which aren't healthy for kids right now, with excess of information, with distraction, with social media, with self-esteem issues, with self-worth issues. And I think these things just go to take that to make their confidence, to make them believe in themselves, to realize that there's no one particular way to living a happier life, but there's so many other ways. So I think, on behalf of everyone listening, I think thanks for doing this. And
Thank
um,
you.
if you could just tell people where they can find the Brain Gym, or follow the work you do, or buy the books you've written, I think that would be great for them to get to know you, like how I have over the past few days. So if you could just drop those details, I'll also make it a point to drop it in the description so they can find you and know more about the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Savi. Just find me online. Really, the brain gyms in Sadashvam Nagar. Anyone in this area in Bangalore, do drop in to say hello. And
Lovely.
everything else. So the other thing is, I really don't put out too much on social media. I
Good.
think for me, the brain gym is this magical world, which when you step in, it's this whole cocoon, right? And I kind of I'm so immersed with the kid that I sometimes forget to, I think, share it with the outside world as much as I probably should have. So I'm sorry, you may not find too much out there, but just get in touch with me. I'm happy to say
Yeah.
hello to anyone.
And the
And
only thing is you have to enter by saying a really, really cool word, right? Isn't that a
oh yeah,
prerequisite?
totally. Which one? So Sandy, if I had to ask you a really cool word, what would you say?
Oh God, I knew you'd be asking this. The whole time we've been speaking, I've been thinking of a cool word, man.
You just asked me. Honestly, words are so much fun. Like for me, a
Yeah.
word like flim flam. I mean, can you imagine this one of the books I wrote was like the stories was like the flim flamming flamingo or the
Mm.
somnolent hippo. It could be just anything, pell mell. I don't
I
know.
know.
EBG. I think for
EBG.
you,
No, I'm trying to think of a word which is something I like. Which you got me on a spot, because I've been thinking of words, and I sometimes just smile when I hear a word when I'm listening to a
can I
book.
tell you
And
something? It would be as simple a word as smudge. I don't know if you thought of it. Just say the word smudge.
yeah,
It's
I
such a
like smudge.
I
I
just like
definitely like.
something about smudge. The fact that it's higgledy-piggledy, it doesn't have to be straight for me. Just the connotation of smudge is so beautiful. It's such a
You know
simple
which
word.
word I like actually? I like,
Yeah.
and this may, I don't know if you had a therapist on board in this call, might go to say something about my character, but I love the word fiddle. I just love it.
Why not? Okay, actually, you can. I'm thinking like 5 different ways I like fiddle,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about writing a book called Fiddler on the Roof, but it had nothing to do with the person playing the fiddle. It was just a guy.
But
So that's
see,
the
again,
problem.
that's the fun part. You have to say fiddler on the roof, and trust me, most people today are not going to think of the original fiddler on the roof.
Yeah.
But why not?
I mean, I like Popping Jay. Popping Jay is a great word.
I love
Fiddler.
Pop and J.
Pumblechook. Remember the one, Great Expectations? I love that name, Pumblechook. And I'm not trying to drop my literary credentials here, but I'm just saying I like the words.
I love haddock. For me, one of the haddockisms I've always loved is you bougainvillea. I mean, I think that's just brilliant. You bougainvillea. It's just like, who would think of that? But it does. So, like I said, words, you know what, Sandeep? Words are what you make them out to be. They don't belong to anyone. There is no right way to say a word. There is no right meaning of a word. And I think words set you free. And believe me, at the end of the day, that's all it comes down to. It's these little ink blots, which are just squiggling and jostling around the paper. They magically form themselves into words. And words are just yours. Do what you want with it. And honestly, that's the beauty of it. Just play with it, have fun. The magic of it is that, really.
No, it's amazing that you are doing this, and it's keeping me. It keeps you active and engaged in a language, and I think that's the beauty of it. Not to learn a language and just say, you know what, I've learned it and I'm going to move on, but to take delight in the fact that you can speak it and you can learn new ways of. One is learn things about yourself and learn as a result. Use that language and as a result it's expression, and you express in different ways as you grow older, as you become a different person with age or with experiences in this world. And I think what you are doing just goes to show that it's not something you learn till the 12th and just say, okay, now I've learned what I have to learn and now I can move on and use the word. Because one thing I've noticed is as you grow older, you use fewer and fewer words because you don't need to use those words, because a corporate setting or a certain setting might just demand those words, and then you just say, okay, these are the words I need. But these kind of things, whether it's a game or whether it's this joy in a language, gives you the sense that, hey, let me play around in my head and say, what do I like? What do I like? Bamboozle. I like the word bamboozle. What do I like? These are just words, and you have fun in them, and you interact with people, and they're like, wait a second, where did that word come from? And it just creates a better human experience. So thank you again, because I think it's got my blood flowing.
No, but you know what you just said is so true. When I was growing up, I was a voracious reader, but again, still fairly constrained.
Love it.
Okay, no, just still fairly constrained by the way school was in the 80s and 90s. And you'd be surprised, but actually, a lot of my love for children's literature, for children's poetry, for all of this love for nonsense has happened after I turned 20. So in the last 20 years is where I've discovered it, and I've realized that I think I enjoy it as much as the kids do. The whole imaginative power. I feel at school, I think so. Maybe that's why I wanted to make sure that kids at the younger age have access to that, and kids have it. It's just that how do you relate to it? If you just tell a kid read it, they're not going to enjoy it. You've got to live it with them. You've got to make it as much, as playful, interesting, engaging as you can. And genuinely, in the last 20 years, I think I've just discovered the joy of language much more than I did when I was growing up in school and college. And it's amazing. So it doesn't really matter. I don't think there's an age for language. It's brilliant.
And also the beautiful part is that when you read something as a teenager and then revisit it in your 40s,
you love it that much more.
You love it that much more. And I think that's the beauty of these situations, is that everyone who's listening to this right now, I hope, is going to approach a book or a podcast or whatever they might listen to or read, and be aware that one more sense is open in them. That, hey, wait a second, I like this word. Or it just has one more level of appreciation in the things that you consume. So, hey, thank you again. I think this is great. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to come on and share your excitement in what you do, and also share all the things that you've done, and good luck with everything you continue to do in the future. Nidhi, thank you. I almost call you Shruti. Sorry.
Thanks for listening to me, everyone. But just like I said, find joy, find the magic. It's all there. It's all around you. And find the nonsense. Trust me, it's the best part of anything.
Find the nonsense. Well said, Nidhi. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandeep.